Welcome to Music in Progress, your window into the art of composing music. I'm your host, Michael Cook, a Bay Area composer and multi-instrumentalist. We'll delve into the depths of my creative processes that shape the music I make. Whether you're a fellow musician, an enthusiast, or simply curious about the magic behind the melodies, you'll find valuable insights, practical tips, and innovative techniques to inspire your own musical journey.
How Dorico 6 finally unblocked my creative workflow. Throughout January, I focused on family as my daughter prepared to move to Taiwan for a year. Along with a few gigs, this meant I didn't end up starting a brand new project. That said, I did begin working toward my 2026 goals by revising 10 circles, but before diving into that work, I decided to take on a project I'd been avoiding, porting my orchestra-and-choir piece, Music for Humans, into Dorico. Finally porting Music for Humans. I'd put this one off because it uses modern notation techniques that Dorico doesn't handle particularly well, so I knew it would be difficult. The finale version also relied on an International Phonetic Alphabet, IPA font, to support the pronunciation of Chinese Juyin Fu Hao, which the choir sings. Since I wrote this piece about 20 years ago, I fully expected the port to be messy. Given the downtime, it felt like the right moment to finally tackle it. Dorico 6 to the rescue, mostly. Dorico 6 fixed a condensing bug related to instrument switches, which finally made porting this piece possible. My first attempt revealed a familiar problem. Roughly 90% of the music appeared to be missing. Luckily, I'd seen this before and knew the cause. Rhythmic structures Dorico doesn't like, such as triplets over bar lines. After a few tries, I tracked the issue down to a problematic tie. Once fixed, everything reappeared. The box notation didn't come over, of course, but that was expected. Fixing IPA text. Next, I tackled the text. The original IPA font no longer worked with modern operating systems, so I found a replacement. Once installed, I went to Library Paragraph Styles, assigned the new font to the lyrics, and bam! The text appeared exactly as it had in the original 2006 score. That was a huge relief, especially given how tedious entering IPA symbols in Finale had been the first time around. Splitting staves. With that success behind me, I moved on to the tedious task of splitting staves into individual players. As I discussed in this video, Finale to Dorico Symphony Migration, the work is time-consuming, but once you get into a groove, it starts to move quickly. All told, it took about 3 to 4 days. Harp pedals, a small win. I then experimented with Dorico's automatic harp pedal diagrams, which work very well. There was only one passage where enharmonic spelling confused the software. I ended up using a mix of pedal diagrams and note names. In Finale, I created all of this manually using text, so having Dorico handle it automatically felt like a genuine upgrade. Rebuilding box notation in Dorico. With a solid rough draft in place, I turned to the biggest challenge, replacing the box notation. Over the years, I'd seen many approaches, some good, some not. But I wanted something close to my Finale workflow, especially because it allowed playback that gave performers and conductors an idea of what the music should sound like. In Finale, I'd improvise or play in the material, then use staff styles to hide the notation and reduce the staff to a single line, and finally overlay a custom box. It was fast, and it created playback, but the box didn't scale well between score and parts, often forcing me to maintain separate versions. Here's how I replicated that approach in Dorico. I created a custom one-line staff instrument with no clef and designed 3 line types: the top of the box, the bottom of the box, and a thick horizontal line extending across the duration. I saved everything as a Dorico library so I can reuse it without rebuilding it each time. I'm providing a link to this library for readers who want to use it themselves. You just need to download it, install it in your default library editions directory, and restart Dorico. Installation instructions are included in the zip file. For each player that needs box notation, I start by creating a new instrument using the one-line staff instrument from the custom library. I then either transfer existing material or write new music directly into that staff to serve as the playback content for the box. At this point, I switch to play mode and assign the playback sound I want for that part. Once the playback material is in place, I move to the measure where the box notation should begin. Opening the Lines tool, I use the horizontal lines labeled box bottom and box top. I set the start position to rhythmic position and the end to bar line. Then select the measure and apply the box bottom line, followed by the box top line. After that, I switch to engrave mode to adjust the box visually as needed. Because there are no staff styles available for this setup, the notation inside the one-line staff has to be hidden manually. This is the most tedious part of the process. In engrave mode, I first select all the rests and set their color to transparent. Then, with the measure still selected but the rests deselected, I hide accidentals and enable hide ledger lines, stems, and note heads. At that point, only a single line remains visible. The notes still play back, but nothing prints. Next, I return to write mode, switch to galley view, and select all the measures over which the box should extend in the one-line staff. I open the Lines tool again, set both the start and end positions to bar line, and apply the box solid line. When I switch back to page view, the result is a clean box that spans the intended duration. One of the nicest aspects of this approach is that it works consistently in both the score and the parts, something that was often problematic in Finale. It's not elegant, but it works, and unlike my old Finale workflow, it scales cleanly between score and parts. 2 unsolved issues for now. There are still 2 things I haven't solved in Dorico 6. First, the vertical bar lines in the one-line staff are short. I'd prefer full-height bar lines to make it easier for performers to count measures. Second, when I added clefs to the one-line staff, they didn't appear where I expected, and I couldn't find a workable way to reposition them. If you don't add a clef, the one-line staff instrument defaults to an invisible one and avoids the problem entirely. However, I wanted the clefs to appear, as they did in the original version of the piece. In the end, I fixed the placement after exporting the score to PDF and adjusting it in a graphics program. Maybe that's overkill, but I like scores to look the way I intend, not just the way the notation software allows. All told, the score now looks about 99% the way I want, and I'm content with that. Revising 10 circles. Dorico 6 also introduced cutaways, which is how I originally created circle music pieces in Finale. That gave me the push to finally tackle my first official 2026 goal, revising 10 circles. This piece isn't written for fixed instrumentation. It can be performed by any group of players you can assemble. One ongoing issue was that it never really had a proper score. I conducted the premiere from a treble clef part, even though other parts contained different material. I also wanted to add a percussion part. The first performance only used timpani, and at times the texture felt too dense, so I needed a better way to manage that. I started by importing the old score part into Dorico, but it didn't translate well. I ultimately decided to start from scratch. I created 6 players: treble clef, bass clef, C clef, grand staff, timpani, and percussion, and made each circle its own flow. I alternated open meter and 4/4 measures, then copied material in from existing Music XML parts. With condensing and cutaways enabled, the score came together quickly. I added a new percussion part and instructions. With Dorico 6's cutaways working reliably for 10 circles, I now have a clear path to porting several other circle music pieces I previously assumed would be difficult. The feedback phase. Because the notation is non-traditional, I'm still nervous about clarity. I reached out to several conductor friends, many of whom are also composers, and asked them a simple question. Does this make sense? And could you explain it to an ensemble? That feedback phase is the final step. It may take a while, but it feels good to have made real progress and to have essentially completed one of my 2026 goals in the first month of the year. Stepping back, this felt less like a technical exercise and more like clearing a path forward. Solving these notation problems makes it easier to revisit older work without friction. And more importantly, it removes a few mental barriers that had been quietly slowing me down. That alone makes the effort worth it.